right, ladies and gentlemen, I am Joe. He is Nick. You are listening to the Nick and Joe Show, coming to you live from the broadcast. Oh, now you've got me fumbling at Nick. Coming to you live from the Think Radio Broadcast Center in Canada's national capital. Okay, just a second. I have to stretch a little bit here and get a little bit more energy, because that sounded a little bit low energy, Nick. I don't know. Anyway, here I am in the studio. Nick's out on the farm by phone. Are you there, Nick? Are we connected?
We are connected. I am here. You are there, and nary the twain shall meet tonight.
You know, I feel like I should be... did you ever see the television series Frasier?
I know of it. He was the talk show host, right?
He was a psychiatrist / talk show host, yeah. So, so the guy that would come on to the after his show was done was a fellow, I can't remember his name, but it was Bulldog somebody. And he'd come on there with his bicycle horn. He was a sports talk show guy, and he had his Chinese gong or whatever, and, real high energy. And I always thought, I should do that. We should get some horns and gongs and stuff like that. And
have you ever seen the movie, which one, Seabiscuit?
I didn't see the whole movie. I've seen about 3/4 of it.
Did you see the guy who's calling the races for the radio?
No, I don't recall. He had all
kinds of sound effects.
Yeah.
He had a little xylophone. He had a little gong. He had a train whistle. He had all kinds of stuff. And that pair of shoes, he could make it sound like he was walking through the crowd and getting a on-the-spot interview when he was up in his booth. It was the early days of radio, no doubt about it.
Well, we have sound effects too now, right?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
we even have fake. No, we don't have fake callers.
We do not.
No.
I have stories about that. Let me tell you. Fake callers.
Yeah, I know a guy who lost his job for that.
Now, are you talking somebody in a political party?
Mayor's office, I think.
Oh, you see, I know somebody in a political party, but this is not a discussion for on air. This is something you and I have to talk about offline.
Okay.
It's a humorous story, and someday we will reveal it publicly, but just not tonight.
All right, fair enough.
Anyway, now I hear you yawning in the background, Nick, and that can only mean one thing: you have not recovered.
We need to get going.
You have not recovered from the switch from daylight Eastern Standard Time to Eastern Daylight Savings Time. You have not recovered yet. And that's not a surprise. Well, Nick, I got to tell you, sorry to interrupt, but this is really critically important for people's health. I have to tell you that I am not surprised that you haven't recovered, because clearly, given the number of stories that I read about, advice on how to deal with this terrible, terrible inconvenience, this losing 1 hour's sleep every 6 months. Actually, it's every year, because you gain an hour in the fall when we switch the clocks back. I mean, there must have been 36 stories in the week before the time change about how to survive, using that kind of language. How to survive the time change. And I'm going, my goodness gracious, is this a poignant commentary on how soft and wimpy and marshmallowy and snowflakey our society has become? That you have to go to the healthcare experts for advice. You have to get therapy in order to survive that cataclysmic event that occurs once a year, losing an hour's sleep because we changed the clocks.
Oh, the answer is absolutely. Look, can you imagine if you spread that out over the 6 months of the different time zones that we, flip back and forth, how many minutes a day that is? Give me a break. Now, I know they got to do it all at once, but what would happen would anyone complain if, let's say, they got a job and it paid them, let's say $27.89 an hour. I'm just picking a number out of, and they said, oh, by the way, instead of 8:00, you got to be in here for 7. Would anybody complain? Would they think they need psychological counseling? How did our forefathers do it?
Well,
how did they get up with the sun in June and work in the fields all day till the sun went down, and nobody ever said, oh, I need a personal day. Yeah, that personal day was called Sunday. Until then, get back to work, was pretty much the attitude.
Well, you see,
people didn't have time for that nonsense.
Well, you see, you're missing the point, Nick. The point is, when you say, would anybody actually have to have psychological counseling and therapy? Yes, obviously they would. Yes, that's the kind of society that we have now. It's, you would think that they would be able to handle this, but apparently not.
Well, let me ask you something, Joseph. Ask yourself this question, and Mark raises this in the chat room. He makes a comment along this line. Would you prefer to have the sun come up an hour earlier in the morning or in the evening, or the sun go down an hour later in the evening? To me, I know which one it is.
Honestly, if I had to tell you what my preference would be, okay, so you're putting me on the spot, so I have to answer the question. So my answer is, I think I prefer the extra hour sunlight in the evening. Okay? I think I prefer it that way. But I don't care. I wasn't. I was not. Okay, here we go. On the night of March 12th, which was a Friday night this year, and the time changed on the morning, the night between the 13th and the 14th, here in Ontario. Anyway, I don't know what the system is everywhere else, because it's all a patchwork now. It's not as straightforward as it used to be when we were growing up. But Nick, I didn't go to bed on that Friday night thinking to myself, oh, thank God they're going to change the clocks tomorrow night. I just can't take it anymore. I need that extra hour of sunlight. To be perfectly frank, when I went to bed on Saturday night, the only thought that I had was, which clocks are going to change automatically, and which ones do I have to change manually tomorrow morning? Because some clocks now, a lot of clocks change automatically. They're programmed to do that. So
that's right.
I couldn't care less. Of all of the subjects out there that are being debated, and I know, Nick, you've been following some of the political debate around this, but of all of the subjects that are being debated right now that are inconsequential, in my judgment, humble though it may be, this is pretty close to the top of the list of inconsequential, irrelevant debates to have.
I'm finding it hard to argue with that. Of course, I was being a little facetious earlier, but at the same time, if you can't, especially if you know it's coming, just go to bed an hour earlier. Like, why is this huge strain on the brain? I mean, as you put it, have we turned into that much of a marshmallow that, any heat at all, and we melt like a marshmallow on a stick?
Oh, Nick, go to bed an hour earlier? What a it's an epiphany, Nick.
I know.
Nobody's thought about it. And the worst part about that suggestion, Nick, is somebody's going to complain that you're giving therapeutic advice without a license.
I do that all the time.
It's psychoanalysis.
Our whole show could be called that.
It's psychoanalysis, but the big question is, from my point of view, is what kind of psychoanalysis is it? Is it analysis of my psyche, or is it that I'm being analyzed by a psychopath?
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't mean that with regards to you, Nick. That's just one of those questions that happens to be
rhetorical questions.
A rhetorical question, indeed.
Yes, because from where I sit, you're right. I couldn't care less. It's funny. If you look at the things that people get worked up over in life, how many of them really, really don't matter? And that, the old saying, you can tell something is important if you'll remember it 5 years from now. If you won't, it's not. So take something like you put a dent in the car. Okay, it's a pain, it's a hassle, but is it worth losing your crap over? No. If you can't afford to fix it, then don't. And if you can, get it fixed. If you got insurance and somebody's dinged your car, deal with it. But don't lose any sleep over it. It's just a car. I don't care how much it's worth. It's still just a car. And the more it's worth, the better insurance policy you should have around it. And if it's a junker, then who really cares? If you've seen some of the cars I've driven over the years, you'd think, why don't you just shoot and bury it? Because it still runs.
I've seen some of the boats you have in your front yard.
Yeah, talk about something that should be shot and buried. But you get my point. Like, it doesn't matter. Or how many people will get upset over... Take the death of Lady Diana is a classic example. Now, look, I'm not saying that people shouldn't feel sad when you have an international figure like her, pass.
Yeah,
especially
you're going to get us in trouble here, Nick, I can tell.
I know, but I'm good at it. But I watched people standing in front of Buckingham Palace. There's this wall of flowers, 4 or 5 feet high, just, thousands of flowers, tens of thousands of dollars wasted on flowers that she'll never see, never get, it's a symbolic thing. I understand that. But, okay, so I vividly remember these 2 girls who didn't even know each other hugging and crying like babies because Princess Diana passed away. Well, look, if it was your mother, I understand. If it was your sister, I understand. If it was your cousin or a very close personal friend, I get it. But these people had never even seen the woman, never mind have any kind of a relationship with her. And yet there they are, bawling like babies in the middle of the street. Look, it's tragic, but, is it really worth the kind of mental energy they're putting out for this? No. And it's the same thing like when you have scenarios where things happen half a world away, it's like, and people get all bent out of shape about it. But there's stuff going on in their backyard they don't even think about that they should care about, that they don't. And it just blows my mind. Like, how upset would somebody get if you lived in the city and you had a rabbit tearing up your garden? You have a little flower garden, there's a rabbit out there. So you set a trap for it and you kill it. Okay? It's just a rabbit. Who cares? People would have you hauled up on the nearest yard arm. And yet we've got people sleeping on the streets that are homeless that nobody even looks at twice. Which one's more important?
So what did you do on the day that you heard that Lady Diana had died? Do you remember?
Frankly, I couldn't tell you. I don't remember.
See, I remember what we did. We got it. We got in our minivan, my wife and I, and our 4 children, and we drove up to Calabogie because we had an appointment for one of those timeshare presentations. And we were never going to buy timeshare, but it came with a free pool pass for the kids.
Oh, there you go.
So we took them up there to swim in the pool while the price we paid was, we had to go for a drive. It was a nice day, nice September day anyway. You're going to get us into trouble with this one. People are still gaga over Lady Diana. No disrespect intended, but it's, people are still